Let's talk a little bit about accelerating change. I talk about accelerating because ultimately we want change to move quickly, but not too quickly. When we move through change really quickly, it gets clunky and really uncomfortable. And so when we think about implementing the Impact platform with you all, we really want to make sure that first and foremost, you all are able to be change champions and understand the platform and the reasons behind it so that you can ultimately engage with your team in a productive conversation about why this is the switch and what that means for them, and ultimately how this makes their world and yours better. So I love this quote by Warren G. Bennis: "In life, change is inevitable and business change is vital." I think we've all experienced this at some point in our business career, our professional career, certainly within our personal lives. So I'm curious for you all, if there is one word that you think about when you hear the word change, what is that word? And if you want to post that in the chat, change is really vulnerable. But if you want to tell us, what the one word is that you would use to describe the feeling that the word change evokes for you, that would be really wonderful just to see where folks are. Exciting, opportunity, progress, growth, future. Awesome. New phase. I love it. I love it. Thank you all. So change is really to make something different from what it would be if it were left alone. And I think about this in terms of the work Ashley does, in terms of pottery, the work that I do in terms of glass blowing, both mediums that are unruly and need some control and some parameters. And that's the same for change, right? We can't leave change alone. We need to make our businesses different. We need to evolve. And so change really requires a couple different things. It's a process and not an event. So we can say, yes, we are implementing the Impact platform, but the journey from here on out is really about how that integrates into the organization, where Paylocity fits in, as you all identified last time, where Bonusly fits in, as you all identified last time. And so a lot of this work will be a process because there will be systems that are no longer in use for particular reasons. Some will continue to be in use because they serve you all, but it is a process and not just something where we say, here's Impact. It's personal. I think I hinted at this earlier, like change is uncomfortable and it's sticky. And I love the words that you all shared because those are growth-minded words when you think about change. But it doesn't negate the fact that it feels really personal and feels like it's happening to us versus with us sometimes. It involves growth. And it involves feelings, and that's what makes it personal, and that's what makes us feel certain ways about change. And because it upsets our understanding of the reality of things, right? Something was one way, now it is a different way. How do we recalibrate and ultimately move to the place that is the new? And it does require new behaviors. And so we'll talk a little bit about what those new behaviors are from you, from your team, and ultimately how that leads into a successful implementation of Impact. So another quote, change is inevitable, growth is optional. Again, you all highlighted some really wonderful words that are growth oriented. So new phase, evolution, improvement, future, growth. Those are all really wonderful words to describe what can be a curve. And I love this Kubler-Ross change curve. Has anyone seen this before? Raise your hand or post in the chat if this is something that's familiar to you. Sometimes it's called the grief curve. I don't think that that's actually fair, but Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was very much an innovator in the theory of change. So this is essentially the cycle that a lot of us go through when we enter change. And there is an ending of something. And that ending can be mixed with different thoughts and emotions, right? It can be shock, it can be denial, it can be anger. We don't want to move from that place where we are, potentially, or we desire it, right? And we're sort of like in this place of going through the transition without a lot of those emotions. But normally it leads us to a place of a neutral zone where we're making those transitions and we're moving into this place of a new beginning. We're excited, we're engaged. There's a little bit of confusion because the change is still happening, but ultimately we want everyone to get to this place of high energy. This ultimately impacts productivity. And so I like to think about this as a constant curve where you can go forward, you can go back, depending on how you and your team are feeling about a change. So I like this as a visual for understanding that all of these emotions are very real, they're very normal, and ideally the role of change management is to get through that ending and that neutral zone and get to the excitement and the new beginning. Let's talk about your role as a change champion. What do you all think you need to be doing to help yourself and your team move through change? I'd love a volunteer or two to share a little bit about that. Not necessarily in the chat, feel free to post in the chat, but if I could have one or two volunteers to share a sentence or two about what you think it means to be a change champion. And I'll take raised hands. Jessica, thank you.
I think we can use challenges as, take a challenge not as a problem, but as an opportunity to have improvement in our team and make some changes to make things better.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Stephanie.
So a couple of comments. So I think being a change champion is super important to explain why we're making the change, right? I think that the more you explain the why behind it, the easier people get on board. The other thing that I've done with my team is hit head on. This is going to be hard, right? Not expecting it to be easy. It's going to feel like it's going to take more time. It's going to be hard, but the outcome is going to be positive. And just kind of, hit the elephant in the room head on.
I love it. I love it. Hit the elephant. I could go into elephants and analogies there. It's my favorite animal. But yes, being able to say outright, this is going to be hard. This is going to be a change. Here's how we're going to partner with one another together to move through it, I think is so very important. So thank you both for sharing. Herco, encourage people to experiment so they can discover new ways of doing things. Yes, you all are going to be moving through a new dynamic with your team members, a new way of doing things. And that's exciting. Sometimes it's, a barrier in some ways, right? I've done it this way. I want to continue doing this way because that's comfortable, but ultimately seeing the value and the why of doing it differently and that new behavior. So thank you all for sharing. So your role as a manager in being a change champion is about managing your own responses to change. And again, those are really emotional responses sometimes, or they're responses that are really exciting and drive your team forward. Wherever you are is okay, right? But having the self-awareness to move through those feelings and those responses is really important so that ultimately you can be a role model for your team. And then certainly listening empathetically and understanding objectives. So when you all begin using the Impact platform, you're going to, I expect, hear a little bit of discomfort from your team members. Perhaps it's because you've been doing things a certain way and that has been comfortable for quite some time. Perhaps it is, not wanting to go into another platform or make that change in terms of learning something new. And so being able to listen to those frustrations, understanding what those questions are, and being able to reassure them that this change is positive. And here's the why for the change. is really helpful when your team members start to get into the platform. And then being optimistically honest. Stephanie, I think you sort of hinted at this in terms of being optimistic about the opportunity that it presents. And one of you, or some of you, actually posted that change means opportunity. And that's certainly really important in terms of being honest, being excited, and finding that balance of being genuine in how you're feeling about change, how you're moving through change, and how you can support your team in that. So I want to pause here. How are you all feeling about change? Ashley's feeling good about change. I see nods. I love it. I'm just going to keep checking because it's not early here, but like it's 10:45. So we've still got a second cup of coffee moving through us. Love it, Natasha. Love it. So here's a framework and a change management tool that I really like using. And it can be, I can make this a really long narrative about change. I will avoid that for the sake of time and so that I don't get those glossy looks. But I love using the ADKAR model as a results-oriented change management tool. And ADKAR stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And so these are some of the steps that you can take if you feel so inclined in managing change with your team. And this is not just change for impact and the platform. This is change of any sort. So organizational change, my engineers and my software folks, I'm looking at you in terms of technology change and what that might look like. This is a tool that I find really helpful and easily accessible. And it's grounded in Procy's change model. So it's not just one that I came up with off the top of my head. So what do we think awareness means? When I think of awareness, it's eyes wide open and creating awareness for ourselves and for our team that there's an understanding of the need for change and creating that buy-in. Stephanie highlighted the why, and this is essentially that. So creating that awareness and understanding the why will help create buy-in for you and your team. And then from there, you're building and sparking that desire. So I have the motivation to change. I get to choose and be a part of that change, and I can support that change in these ways. And I will send along a question or a list of questions that you all can use as managers to understand where the awareness is of your team to help spark desire. So these are words, we're talking through them. I'll send you a follow-up guide on this. But ultimately, there becomes the knowledge. And I feel like this is probably where we are with you all. We've created awareness that impact is ultimately your performance management tool. I'm hoping that we've sparked a desire to continue delving deeper into that. I've heard that there's a lot of excitement to just know how it works, and we'll get there today. And then building knowledge and understanding how to use that platform or how to navigate through that change with the appropriate skills so that the change becomes a reality. We're also nurturing ability within our time with you all today, and you'll be nurturing ability as you start to move your teams onto the platform and having one-on-ones, having check-ins, and giving feedback and praise. And so really, we want to make sure that everyone feels equipped and comfortable to utilize the platform in the ways that serve you all and in the ways that ultimately serve the business, as Christina and Beth have identified with their teams. And then we love a good celebration and creating reinforcement. And so this is anything that strengthens the change within the organization. So we rolled on Impact into our platform in, actually, what was it, August or September of last year? And we're still celebrating each other as we find new and different things in the platform, as we work through surveys and building out the analytics and some of our new features. And so as we start to use those pieces, it's creating reinforcement and continued strength of the platform and our usage of that. And we are change champions. This was a lot of words, a lot of things to throw at you. So I want to take a beat and I want to talk to you about an example of a disastrous change. So I'm sure we can all think of a disastrous change that we've had in our life. Maybe disastrous is harsh, but we'll go with it. So let's think about an apartment building. You have just moved into this really lovely apartment building in downtown or wherever serves you, whether it's suburban, urban, or somewhere in between. You've moved into this apartment building and it's wonderful. You've been there for about a year, and naturally you get the notice. So you get the notice that your rent is going to go up by $200 a month. And that's really all the notice says. And there's nothing other than this will happen in a month. So naturally, that impacts your ability to plan financially. It certainly has some like really weird feelings of why you're finding out about this on paper without any further context. And so there's money, right? You've got a budget and you've got a plan for that. And ultimately, I don't know, for me, that makes me a little frustrated because it's just been this sort of like transactional act that my apartment building has inflicted upon me, right? A smoother change. I'm in the apartment building. I love it. It's wonderful. I have a view of the baseball field and I can watch the games during the summer. I still receive a notice. But my notice actually talks about how we're going to improve the community and build additional features that ultimately want me to stay. And so there are things that they're going to improve. They're going to expand the pool and they're going to create more space for friends and family to join in during the summer. They're going to add a barista. And that barista is going to be on site every day from 7 to 10 so that I can get my latte and not have to go out. And then they're going to add a bar. And that bar is going to be open in the evenings for social hours and for being able to invite friends over to have drinks. Naturally, all of that costs money, but they've built awareness of what this change will mean and how I can ultimately gain some additional amenities into my apartment complex that make me a little bit more willing to pay less than 10% of my rent in addition to what I'm already doing per month. And so ultimately, when I think about this change, they've created awareness, they've garnished buy-in and my desire for a change because I love a latte in the morning, as you all know. And so it makes me feel better and I have a sense of getting some additional value out of my apartment complex and out of that money that I'm spending. And so I'm happy. So that's a smoother change than a red notice on your door, right?